fall of the Mycenaean Age, in about 1100 BC, Greece went into a period known as the Dark Ages. During the Dark Ages, people lived scattered around Greece in farm villages. These villages grew and evolved. They established governments, educational systems, and militaries. The villages became known as city-states, or polises. After Greece defeated Persia in about 470 BC, the city-state Athens formed the Delian League. The Delian League was an alliance of about 200 city-states. These city-states formed an alliance with Athens being the leading city-state. Athens used their power to control the other city-states, creating an Athenian empire. As Athens grew in power, other city-states began to view them as a threat. Another alliance of city-states formed was called the Peloponnesian League. Sparta was the head of the Peloponnesian League and was only 150 miles from Athens. So at this time, this is what Greece looked like. Everyone knew war between Athens and Sparta was inevitable. In 431 BC, only about 40 years after Greece defeated Persia in the Persian War, Sparta declared war on Athens, starting the Peloponnesian War. But which city-state was more fit to rule? This chart shows the differences between Sparta and Athens, and their government, military, women's rights, and economy. First is government. Sparta had an oligarchy with two kings. These two kings didn't make a lot of decisions. A group of elders who were noble scholars over 60 years old made the decisions. They also had an assembly that would pass laws. However, the elders could make the laws not be applicable. 5 ephors made the decisions about education, while the kings were focused on wars. Athens had a democracy, but only free white males over 18 were considered citizens and could vote. An assembly of 500 men over 30 years old would meet at the top of a hill every 10 days. At least 6,000 men had to be in session for it to be considered an assembly meeting. The 6,000 men proposed new laws and ideas, and the 500 assembly members voted on them. Next is economy. Spartan economy was based off of conquering territories and farming. They would plunder territories and farm on the new land. People who were previously inhabitants in the territory either became citizens or slaves. On the other hand, Athens' economy was based off of trade. They traded silver, gold, pottery, honey, and olive oil for goods like cloth and food, because they did have a big lack of food. The next concept is women's rights. In Sparta, women were expected to be at the same level as men. They were in charge of protecting the house when the men were at war, and they were trained in fighting just like the men. They went to school and learned what the men learned, however, were not allowed to be soldiers. The importance of women in Spartan society gave them an advantage because they had more people to fulfill roles. However, women in Athens had almost no rights. Girls wouldn't learn to read, write, or defend themselves. They would stay at home with their mother and learn how to clean and take care of their family. As an adult, their duties were limited to taking care of the house and taking care of the family. The limited women's rights limited the effect they could have on society. The final concept was military. Sparta's military was based off of army or infantry might. They had soldiers that trained all their lives to be soldiers, and every man in the city-state was trained. Their navy was decent, however their infantry was unstoppable and the best in ancient Greece. Athens had a very strong army, but they couldn't beat Sparta land-wise. They did, however, have the best navy in Greece, which gave them an advantage in trade and combat. These city-states were very comparable to each other, but as the Peloponnesian War showed, Sparta was better. In the chart previously shown, it states that Athens is run off a democracy. One of the main reasons people consider Athens better than Sparta is the government. However, Athenian government was limited to white males, and the majority of them were rich. Sparta's government was an oligarchy. An oligarchy consists of a small group of people who rule the country. These people were usually wealthy and significant in some way. They were also white males. This shows that Athens and Sparta had a very similar government, downgrading the argument saying Athens is better because of its government. In Athens, women had no rights whatsoever. They couldn't do anything and didn't get educated. In Sparta, women were trained in combat like men and learned everything like men. The only right they didn't possess that men had was the right to fight in war. they would have to stay home and take care of the property during war. They had to know how to run things in the community and fight to take care of the city when the men were gone. Sparta used their women for something, giving them an edge against Athens, who didn't let women do anything. Athens is considered to have a better economy. But the only reason their economy is successful is because they tax the city-states in their alliance. This is very unjust and shows how economically unstable Athens is. Their only other source of income was trade. But Athens had to trade a lot for food. They had many valuable resources such as gold and silver, but their lack of food caused them to have to trade for food and not make much of a profit. Sparta, on the other hand, makes most of its income by plundering conquered territories. They would conquer an area, plunder it for resources, then farm in the new land and enslave the previous inhabitants to work on the farm. Because of their lack in food and unjust treatment of allies, Athens' economy is much worse than the Spartans. Another way Sparta is better is through its military might. Sparta was built on its military. All boys from age 7 would go to a barracks and vigorously train to become a soldier. Only around the age of 30 would they be able to go into combat, and all men from Sparta were trained soldiers and reported when they were needed. Because of this, Sparta is known for being conquerors and controlling a lot of territory. Athens had a good military, however, there were many flaws that made Spartan military better. First of all, men had to become soldiers, and not all of them were trained in combat. Also, women weren't trained in combat, so when soldiers were at war, no one could protect the property. Lastly, only rich men could be in the army because you had to buy your own equipment, like armor and shields. That made it very hard. That made a big decrease in the amount of troops. Even though Athens had a very good navy, they weren't able to beat Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. And if Athens can't protect itself from Sparta, that shows that it can't protect itself from the world. So Sparta is definitely way more fit to be the ruling city-state of Greece.